What's up, guys? This is Zach with Top Deck Nation, and today we're going to be looking at the first place list from the recent European International Championships, and that is going to be Tord Reklev's Zoroark-GX Golisopod deck. Now, as many of you might know, Tord Reklev is definitely not a new player in the community. He's very well respected, has a lot of achievements and accomplishments already, including taking first place back in July at the North American International Championships. So I think that makes him the first two-time international champion, which is pretty insane. But this deck is pretty crazy. I do want to go over it. I know a lot of people had been talking about this kind of broken version of Gardevoir featuring max potions and Alolan Vulpix. So I do want to hopefully post that this week, but let me know in the comments if you guys want to see it. But again, we are going to go over Tord's deck here because I do think it's pretty unique. And going forward, I definitely think this is going to be a deck to beat. So with that said, the main strategy of the deck is going to be revolved around Zoroark GX. Definitely needs no introduction. It has that trade ability where you can discard a card and draw 2 cards. And again, that does stack. So if you have multiple Zoroark, say you have 3 Zoroark, well, let's discard 3 cards and draw 6. Really strong, pretty much makes you improve in the mid to late game. Even if your opponent plays an N and you go down to 1 or 2 cards, you can just keep drawing cards thanks to trade and get back up to 6. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to do that. But Righteous Beating is also a great attack for a DCE, so a single attachment, 20 damage for each of your Pokemon in play. So you can have up to 5 on your bench and 1 active, so 6 times 20 is going to be 120 damage. So it doesn't really quite hit those magic numbers of like 180, 190, 210, something like that. But Righteous Beating is great because when paired with Acerola, definitely tough to stop. You're two-shotting a lot of popular Pokemon in the format. They probably hit you and come close to a knockout, and then you just scoop it up and just kind of rinse and repeat. And that's the strategy of the deck. I mean, you're drawing cards to trade, getting set up, and making sure that all of your turns are super consistent. You're two-shotting your opponent. You're wiping all that damage off the board. That's pretty much it. And as you can see here, he really focused on the Zoroark line as opposed to the Wimpod line, which is just 3-2. So definitely worth noting that Golisopod is more of a secondary attacker in the deck. The focus is on Zoroark, and that's why I think we're going to see Zoroark a lot more in the format. So he played a 4-4 line of the Zoroark, and he also played one of the Breakthrough Zoroark with stand-in. Now, I really love this from Tord's part, just because I think Zoroark is one of the most underrated cards. It was in Breakthrough, so it stayed in the format, but stand-in is such an underrated ability. Being able to just switch on the fly, get out of status conditions, things like that. Now, he didn't play any Floatstone, which is kind of worth noting. But I guess what you could do is maybe like rush in with the Zoroark, Guzma something, and bring up the Zoroark GX. So that is a play as well. But Zoroark has Mind Jack for a DCE, so another single attachment. That's kind of the theme of the deck here. We just want to be able to attach an energy and hit pretty hard. Mind Jack does 10 damage and then 30 more for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So theoretically, it can cap out at 160, and then with a Choice Band, it can cap out at 190, which is enough to knock out a lot of stuff. That knocks out Volcanion and Ho-Oh and Darkrai, just lots of big heavy hitters in that 180 to 190 range, even Tapu Lele, for example. So Zoroark definitely warranted, and it's a great 7th prize attacker as well, so making your opponent work a little bit harder to actually win the game. But we have some awesome tech cards in here as well. We have Mr. Mime with that bench barrier ability, prevent all damage done to your benched Pokemon by attacks. This is probably great against Tapu Koko, good against Buzzwole, that did receive several placements in top 32 and I think a couple in top 8. So definitely a relevant tech now. He also played a copy of Tapu Koko, probably there just to kind of soften your opponent up. Maybe they're just in range of a knockout after a fly and flip or two. It's also great for free retreat, so you can Guzma something up, bring up the Tapu Koko, and free retreat back into something like Golisopod or Zoroark. We also see Mewtwo, and Mewtwo is definitely out of the ordinary here. It has Psychic, so another DCE, 20 damage plus 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this could be pretty good against Garbodor. It could be good against Gardevoir, for example, if they put a ton of energy on that Gardevoir. But I mean, in general, this is a pretty interesting tech card, really good against anything that's weak against Psychic. I guess Espeon GX, even Buzzwole with the Choice Band, you're doing quite a bit of damage. So So Tord, I mean, he definitely thought about this deck as he built it. I mean, he played a really unconventional list here. I guess I didn't really go over Golisopod, but Golisopod's got first impression doing 30, 90 more if it became your active. So, I mean, 120, again, the single attachment, and you can just kind of scoop it up the following turn. And Tord opted not to play any Rainbow Energy, so unfortunately we can't use Zoroark's GX attack, but we can use Golisopod's, of course, cross-cutting GX. With a choice band, it's doing 180 and goes right back to the bench, so that is really, really strong. Like I said, 180 is kind of the magic number. But Golisopod, again, kind of a secondary attacker. I think Zoroark is better overall, but just having that one-hit KO capability makes it viable in this deck as well. And finally, of course, we have 3 Tapu Lele just for that Wonder Tag ability. Being able to search your deck for a supporter is huge, especially when you rely on something like Brigette for these heavy evolution decks, so definitely no surprise there. But that should cover the Pokemon, guys. We are going to look at the supporter line now, which is really interesting. It looks really unconventional. I saw the 2 Sycamores and I was like, wait a second now. But the more I kind of thought about it, the more games I played with the deck, it does make a lot of sense, mainly because you play such a thick count of these Zoroark, you're drawing a ton of cards and you really don't want to have to discard them. So at a first glance, it seems kind of weird, but playing only 2 Sycamore does make sense. He's playing 4 in, you know, that makes sense because if you have a really thick hand, you just can't draw into what you need even after you use trade several times. You can just end and put back in the deck, and it's also great against making sure that you don't deck out, since this is really aggressive with drawing cards. He also played 1 copy of Mallow, so this was really surprising to me, but it does make sense because he does play Puzzle of Time. Being able to put any 2 cards on top of your deck is pretty good already, but being able to essentially draw those cards at will just with that trade ability, that's pretty insane. He also played Puzzle of Time again, so that means I can put Puzzle of Time on top, 2 copies I should say, and that means you can actually essentially Mallow for 2 cards from your discard if you think about it that way. So practically any card is accessible to you throughout the game thanks to Mallow. He's playing 4 Guzma, which isn't too uncommon with the Golisopod decks, being able to just make sure that we first impression all the time, but really strong in general. I mean, if your opponent retreats, you can just Guzma something up. If your Zoroark's about to get knocked out, just Guzma something up and retreat it. So I mean, a lot of options with that 4 Guzma. He's also playing 3 Brigette. Most decks play 1 to 2. Most, I would say, actually favor 1 because it's got such a low chance of being prized as it is. But to play 3 is just pretty insane. I guess he found the room in here. He just realized, you know, I don't have to squeeze all of this stuff in. I don't have to play 4 Sycamore. I don't have to play Floatstone. But if I don't get the Brigette on turn 1, this deck is going to crumble apart pretty quickly. So that's kind of his logic, I would assume, for Brigette. And definitely paid off. I mean, in the finals, he did whiff and actually get donked the second game, but the other 2 games, I believe he had the turn 1 Brigette, and that made all the difference in the world because he got set up super quick. I think he was able to get like 3 Zoroark GXs out on his second turn, so really important. And then keep in mind, you can also just kind of discard those Brigettes with Ultra Ball, with Zoroark's trade ability. So you know, once you've used them, it's not a huge big deal. Once you've used it on the first turn, at that point, they're just kind of discard fodder. So it does make sense. And then we also have 3 Acerola. So Acerola is insanely good with Zoroark and Golisopod as well. I mean, any deck that just can utilize a single attachment and doing a lot of damage, Acerola is going to be great. But this is just a stage 1 deck. I mean, it's not a stage 2 deck, and yet you have these attackers that are just insanely good. You have 210 HP, so really unlikely that it's going to get one-shotted. It can already just exchange knockouts with you and 2-hit KO. So Acerola is just incredibly strong in the deck, and as I watched in the finals earlier, Tord definitely made use of it. Now, in terms of the item cards here, we have some pretty unconventional things here. We have 4 Ultra Ball, which is standard. I mean, searching out your Pokemon, making sure that you can discard when needed. But the 4 Puzzle of Time is really unconventional. I haven't seen Puzzle of Time played in a while, actually. I mean, when it first came out, people were kind of debating if this card would get banned because it's just so good. But the fact that you had to have both cards in your hand made it less playable, and so people just started not really playing it. I think in Expanded, it's actually good with something like Sableye Garbodor. But it's interesting to note that at this tournament, I think a deck actually made top 16. It was a Heatmor Raichu. It was a really rogue deck, and it actually played for Puzzle of Time. So it was more of a mill deck. I think you basically paired it up with the Fliptini Victini. So that way you could flip coins and make sure that you could put cards in your hand, and then you just slowly milled your opponent. So if you guys want to see that deck profile, he did post it on Facebook. Just let me know and I should be able to get that and post it up later this week. But in general, Puzzle of Time, I can definitely see its place in this deck. I mean, it just adds just this unrivaled sense of consistency to the deck. Being able to pair it up with Mallow especially, I mean, just crazy, crazy good. You're always going to have outs to Acerola and other supporter cards. Maybe you use them just to have like several Enhanced Hammer to use without the game, or throughout the game, I should say. So, I mean, Puzzle of Time in this deck makes sense. It was just a matter of squeezing everything in there. But like I said, he's not really playing Sycamores. He's not playing Floatstones. He's playing a much thinner count of Wimpod and Golisopod. So I guess he made the space, and it definitely paid off for him. He's also playing 4 Field Blower, which is also pretty insane. 2 is pretty much the standard. I've seen people kind of play 1 or 3 every once in a while, but to max out that Field Blower count, it just gives you this inherent advantage against something like Garbotox and Garbodor. They're just going to keep attaching those float stones, trying to lock you out of your abilities since this deck is so reliant on them, but it doesn't really matter because even if you only get to play a couple, you can just Puzzle of Time, get those back, and eventually they just can't get the Garbotox and Garbodor activated. So really good against that, really good against Potown, really good against Parallel City. So I mean, really just unconventional deck. I'm just kind of wowed here because it's just so many ideas just kind of culminating together, but somehow it works. So I definitely have to give props to Tord in that regard. He's also playing Enhanced Hammer. Again, Enhanced Hammer is great in this format where a lot of people are playing Special Energy. For a while it just wasn't played, but now people are starting to get punished for playing them. This is a format full of double colorless energy in a lot of decks. It's full of rainbow energy and things like Golisopod and Garbodor decks. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Enhanced Hammer going forward. And then finally with the items, we have 2 Choice Band. I guess he didn't really have to play a lot of Choice Band because you could just reuse them with Puzzle of Time. And a lot of times it doesn't even really help with the math just because Choice Band is going to make you do 150 with Golisopod or Zoroark. So not enough to actually help with those one-hit knockouts, but it is good with that crossing cut GX attack just to hit 180 if you need it. So that pretty much wraps up everything in the list, guys. I think the energy count, he's just playing 7 energy. Again, he's focused on just making these single attachments, hitting hard, and then using Acerola. So he's only playing 4 DCE and 3 grass. You don't really need a special charge or a super rod or anything, just because you can always Puzzle of Time if necessary. But with that said, guys, let's go ahead and jump into a game I played on PTCGO earlier, so that way you can see this pretty insane deck in action. Okay guys, we are going to go ahead and get started with this match featuring Tord Reklev's really unique Zoroark GX list. It looks like I did win the coin flip, so that's always good. I'll get to go first, hopefully get set up. And my hand, I don't know what to say about it. I have Tapu Lele, but unfortunately it's going to have to be active. But my opponent did mulligan, so maybe I can look out and get the Brigette because it's really important. Otherwise, my hand, if I can get a couple of Zorua out, the next turn I can get 2 Zoroark GX, and that's going to put me at a big advantage right off the start. So we're going to have to see how it goes here. I think my opponent is playing an Alolan, Ninetales, and Zoroark deck, so that'll be pretty interesting. I'll have to be careful to make sure that I don't have a really low HP attackers on the bench, so that way Alolan, Ninetales can't spread that damage. So it looks like I did get 3 mulligans off of that, so I drew 3 cards, and I will Brigette. I'm just kind of looking through the deck. Looks like an energy might be prized, maybe the Tapu Koko, but otherwise it's not that bad. I can Brigette for 2 Zorua and the Wimpod, and I think I will just pass. I could have attached the DCE, but I don't really see a need for that. I would much rather just attach to the Zorua next turn. I might even luck out if my opponent didn't have anything else, but it looks like he did Ultra Ball. He does have the Tapu Lele, and he is going to go ahead and more than likely get the Brigette, assuming it's not prized. So what we're looking at here is probably going to get a couple of Vulpix, I guess, and maybe a Zorua, or vice versa. It really just kind of depends what the focus of his deck is. But yeah, I mean, since he played Brigette, that means that he can't play in, so this hand is going to be really, really good the first turn, or the second turn, I should say. So he attaches the Vulpix, and can he really do anything else? Is he going to... Okay, I guess he's going to pass. He's not going to beacon. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and evolve to both of my Zoroarks. Now, it's worth noting that I think Righteous Beating is doing 80 damage, so if I Guzma, I can actually bring up one of those Vulpix or Zorua and take the knockout. And I think I'm going to go for the Vulpix with the energy. I think it's the bigger threat, just because if he does Aqua Patch, if he does DCE, then he's already in range of knocking out something. So let's go ahead and do that. And this just kind of gives you an idea of how easy it is to set up this deck. As you can see here, it's already set up, second turn of the game. And I do have that draw engine going. So from now on, every turn in the game, I can draw an extra 4 cards, which is pretty insane. If I get another Zoroark GX out, for example, that's going to be 6 cards. So I think Tord did play a 4/4 line in Zoroark. So it's pretty insane to think about having 4 Zoroark out and discarding 4 pretty bad cards in your hand. Cards you don't need and drawing 8 every turn. That is pretty ridiculous. So he's going to Ultra Ball. I would think that okay, he's actually going to get Vulpix, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know if he actually played a supporter. Maybe one of his Lele's is prized or something, but he is going to use Beacon. He's going to search for a Pokemon, so more than likely he's going to get the Ninetales and, yeah, the Lele as it shows here. So it is my turn again. Now I drew a Brigette. That's not really going to help, but I can just Ultra Ball it away. Had to actually discard a puzzle just because I want to hold on to all my supporters. They're all pretty important here. But I was looking for the Tapu Koko. I really wanted to Guzma out that Vulpix with the energy and Choice Band on it. But looks like that's not going to happen. But the good thing is that I can still just Righteous Beating for another knockout. So that is going to be 2 knockouts over the past 3 turns, which is pretty strong already. We're at a decent little advantage right here, but that can always change. Really just kind of depends what he gets off of this. So he's going to trade. Now he can get a knockout here. I think he just needs 1 more energy and a Kukui. So there's the Wonder Tag. If he has an energy, I think he can actually get the knockout. So there's the Kukui. And there's the Aqua Patch. Okay, so that's going to be 160 plus 30 plus 20. So that's actually perfect math to knock out this Zoroark. So that is going to be pretty hurtful. That means I'm just down to 1 Zoroark GX, but hopefully I can get another one out the next turn. So I'm just kind of thinking about what I should promote. If I had a Grass Energy, I guess I could promote Golisopod, but then again, that wouldn't really work either. So I did draw it, but Golisopod actually has to be on the bench. Otherwise, that first impression attack, I think it only does like 30 damage, and that's just not enough to do anything. So I'm going to play an N just to kind of disrupt my opponent. I'm sure they have something they got off of the prizes, or that they were just kind of holding on to. I'm just kind of reluctantly attaching, maybe getting rid of an Ultra Ball and trading for some stuff. I could Field Blower. I think I'm going to do that. Field Blower is going to make sure that the Choice Band's gone. So that Kukui play probably won't happen again, assuming that they can't attach another Choice Band. So there's another trade. And I really need another Zoroark out. If this one gets knocked out somehow, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So there's a Floatstone. There's an N. Okay, so that means Kukui isn't going to be played. So I will survive this turn somehow. Maybe if I can get an Acerola, that would be really helpful. And an Ice Path. So all of that damage I just did got moved back over to me. So the good thing is that they didn't use it to actually get a knockout. So I could Acerola if I have it. I guess I could double puzzle for the Ultra Ball, for the Lele, for the Acerola. But that seems like a lot. I don't know if I really want to do that or not. But I think I should double puzzle and maybe get a Zoroark. I guess since I can play everything in this hand, I could just get a Professor Sycamore. So that's not a horrible option. Maybe I should have gotten like a DCE or something. But I think that's probably the better play. Maybe put down the Wimpod just in case I need another Golisopod throughout the game. But now I have 3 Zoroark GX. I'm actually going to retreat the one that's damaged. I don't want to have a cheap knockout on my opponent's part. If they want to do that, I want them to have to waste the Guzma. But I am going to go ahead and take that knockout. So we're, looks like we are, or not, yeah, it looks like I didn't take a knockout. But we are tied in prizes right now. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what my opponent does here. He's got 2 Ninetales. We see a Guzma. Okay, so we see a Guzma. Looks like he can probably just bring up the Ninetales and go for another knockout. So my opponent's been really aggressive here. He's hitting those numbers, and he's already down to 2 prizes. So we're going to have to make a comeback here, because otherwise, if he can just power up another Ninetales, attach a Choice Band and Guzma, he'll just win the game. So let's go ahead and Field Blower. I'm not really concerned about using my Field Blowers too much because we play 4. Unfortunately, we can't play double puzzle at this point because 3 are already in the discard, so that's kind of unfortunate, but not a big deal. I did use puzzle just because I want to use trade a few times. I want to see what's on top, but it doesn't really matter because I didn't really find anything useful. So I'm going to trade a couple times. An Enhanced Hammer would actually be pretty good to knock off the DCE on the Ninetales, but again, looks like I whiffed it. So I'm just wondering what the best play here would be. Got a few options, but I'm not really sure what's great. I think I'm going to Mallow for next turn. Get the Enhanced Hammer for sure. I guess I could have gotten a DCE if there's one in there. That way I could cross-cutting GX for a knockout against something like a Tapu Lele maybe. But even so, it looks like I still don't really have the Choice Band to do that. So I'm just going to Righteous Beating. So in hindsight, maybe this was a misplay just to kind of win a couple turns faster. I guess what I could have done was Mallow for the DCE, and I guess that's it. I mean, if I would have had the DCE, because I've already got the Choice Band and the Guzma, that could have guaranteed it next turn. I could have brought up the Lele. So a bit of a misplay on my part, but I don't think there's a way my opponent can actually knock me out. So I think I'm in good shape. And if he does try to put damage on the board, putting pressure on the board, I can just Acerola and be in good shape. So, I mean, I think I still have the clear advantage here unless they can actually power up something. And I don't think they can. I mean, I'm not really sure. They have the Zoroark, but that's not really going to work. I'm actually going to Enhanced Hammer that off. And I think they are down to like either 1 or maybe even no Aqua Patch left. So I don't think Ninetales is much of a threat either. So I'll trade. Looks like I have a couple options. I think I might just go ahead and trade again. Don't really have to have Sycamore. So more Acerola, more Choice Band. I have to think about what the biggest threat on the board is right now. I think I'll go for the Zoroark because it also traps it in the active spot. So if they can't Guzma or Floatstone or something, I'm in decent shape. And at this point, I'm just debating whether or not I should bring up Golisopod or Zoroark. But I think I'll bring up the Golisopod. I don't have to play the DCE because I think I'm low on those and I don't want to run out. So I don't want to be susceptible to an Enhanced Hammer, but I'm going to do 150. So this Zoroark is heavily damaged. My opponent doesn't know if I play Espeon or not. It really just kind of depends what they can do. Can they Acerola? Can they Floatstone? Can they Guzma? They definitely need a lot here, and I don't know if they can get it or not. But yeah, he gets a Zoroark, but he doesn't have a Zorua on the bench. So there's the trade. He's down to just a few cards left in his deck. He's pretty much out of resources here. And that's what this kind of deck's all about. It's just kind of that war of attrition. You're slowly wearing out your opponent. They just can't keep up with all the Acerolas and the healing and stuff, and eventually they run out of resources. So the question is, what can my opponent do with this Zoroark? Can they find a way to scoop it up? I see a Floatstone and a couple Guzma in the discard. We see an energy on the Ninetales. We see a Choice Band on the Ninetales. So do they have anything else at this point? All right, we see a Guzma. It's probably their last Guzma. Brings up the Wimpod because of that 3 retreat cost. And it's going to snipe 50 to Golisopod, but I think we have the game because we can DCE. I guess the DCE isn't even really relevant, but I can Guzma for the Zoroark and knock it out. It doesn't really matter which attack, but I went with the GX attack since we hadn't used it, and that is going to be the game. So we were able to come back from that. My opponent was in a position where they just couldn't knock me out. They were two-shotting me, but I just kept killing with Acerola and retreating. So in general, Tord's deck is pretty amazing, guys. I think it's a really nice spin on Zoroark and Golisopod, so I think we're going to see it forward in the format. Just let me know in the comments what you guys think. Are there any other decks you want to see that were featured at the European International Championships? Be sure to let me know, and be sure to subscribe to the channel as well, guys. Be sure to like that video. I definitely appreciate it. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. This has been Tord Reklev's first place international championship deck, Golisopod Zoroark. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.